Good evening, everyone. My name is Sharon Sellers. I am the Assistant Director of Community Health and the Sibley Senior Association here at Sibley Memorial Hospital. I want to welcome you to this evening's presentation of Discussing the Facts. Our guest speaker this evening is going to be Dr. Dice, who is actually the Director of Clinical Services, the Deputy Chief of Mental Health. Um, for Johns Hopkins University, and I'll tell you a little more about her in a minute. But I want to bring to everyone's attention our partner for discussing the facts. It's the Reverend Dr. Donald Sadler, pastor of New Morning Star Baptist Church. So I'd like you, Dr. Sadler, to get us started. I will then introduce the speaker and we will then go into the presentation. Thank you all for joining in.
Welcome, everybody, for joining Discussing the Facts. Discussing the Facts is a collaboration between Sibley Senior Association and the New Morning Star Baptist Church. We're grateful and thankful that you continue to follow us and have joined us in the new year 2026. And it is an opportunity for us each month to invite competent persons to our panel to discuss health matters that will hopefully bring enlightenment, enhancement, and enrichment to your lives. We're ready to begin, and we are grateful and thankful that my co partner and moderator will begin after we go into prayer. Let us pray. Gracious, eternal, all wise God, the maker, sustainer, and keeper of heaven and of earth. We ask your blessings upon this session this evening and our lives. We pray blessings upon our region that has been trapped with snow and cold weather, but we know that we have warm hearts, and we pray that those who are in the midst of our region will not suffer any tragedies or health issues. We ask that this session will continue to lead us into a new year that is filled with healthy mind, healthy bodies, and healthy spirits. This we ask in the wonderful prayer that will continue to bless us, not just in this session, but in our lives and the remainder of this year. And we ask this prayer and pray that it will continue to keep all of us. We pray. Amen.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sadler. I am so excited this evening to bring Dr. Dice before us. When Dr. Dice and I were communicating and coming up with a topic, I just felt that her topic, Mind Strong in 2026, Practical Tools for Stress, Anxiety, and Emotional Wellness, is so timely. We are happy Dr. Dice joined Johns Hopkins University in 2024 as the Deputy Chief Mental Health Director and the Director of Clinical Services for the Division of Student Well-Being. She has really been making her mark, and she is definitely someone that has found her home with the passion and the mission that she brings to her job. So she is responsible right now for the oversight of all locations at mental health services that are associated with Johns Hopkins. Operations in East Baltimore, in Homewood, in Washington, D.C. She's actually originally from Washington, D.C., so she is quite at home with us today. Dr. Dice is going to come before us with a presentation, and we also will have plenty room and time for questions. I encourage you to welcome Dr. Dice, and I encourage you to type your questions in the Q&A, and we will get to as many of them as possible. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Dice.
Wow, thank you so much, Sharon. That was an amazing introduction. Thank you so much, Reverend Doctor, as well, for having me today. And thank you all for logging on this evening, this very cold evening in January. So appreciate everyone for tuning in and really looking forward to some really great discussion today around one of my favorite topics, which is mental health. I definitely want to be mindful of time because I can definitely be long-winded about this topic and very passionate about it. So I always like to start by putting my contact information in the chat just in case we do sort of get to that time and you all have questions. Feel free to reach out to me directly. I'm always happy to either help or point you in a direction of something that could be of use. I am going to share my screen at this time. I do have a few slides before kind of jumping into our discussion as well. And just thumbs up that you guys can see this, and I'll go ahead and get us started. Um, so as mentioned today, the topic is Mind Strong 2026. It's a new year, but it's a new us as well. And really wanting to deep dive into some practical tools and strategies that we can kind of implement and integrate into our daily life as we kind of navigate this new year and also just some unknown terrain, I think, just that we're all kind of experiencing in different spaces. So thank you again for having me this evening and looking forward to talking with you all. All right. Um, Three things that I really want folks to be able to walk away from this evening is understand a general understanding of what impacts our stress, what impacts our mental health, and what exactly contributes to our worries. Two, making sure that you all walk away with at least one simple tool that you can use to implement on your day-to-day basis for your wellness and to improve your mental health. And three, a particular toolkit that you can integrate into your day to day that you can actually start to use tomorrow. So we're not dealing with hypotheticals tonight. We're not dealing with, the miracle experiences. We're dealing with the for real, and things that you can actually start to use and work into your day starting tomorrow. And what better way than a Friday to kick off the weekend and also with a new perspective and a new way to approach some of the things that we're experiencing. Of course, it would not be a therapist if we did not start with some form of icebreaker. So I won't have you recite what your favorite movie is or what your favorite snack is, although I am also interested in those things. But I thought we could mix up today by figuring out a little bit about how you all are feeling and kind of getting a temperature read from the room around that. So if you're able to on Zoom, there's that sort of emoji option, and I am going to just stop sharing my screen very quickly to kind of check the chat to see if folks can drop an emoji around how they're feeling today. So it could be like a smiley face, it could be whatever it is that comes to your mind. You can also use words too if you're not able to get to the emoji, but we'll take a minute to see what folks are checking in with today. How are they feeling? You can also use the reaction button as well.
Or would
Okay.
you prefer that they put it in the chat? It's what's your preference, Dr. Dice?
It looks like folks are using the reaction button, which is super fun. So I see some hearts, I see some shocked faces, I see some thumbs up, which is also great as well. Folks can also drop their oh, there's a congratulations emoji. Okay, something to celebrate is always amazing and fun. That's awesome. Another thumbs up, another thumbs up. Okay, great. So
I'm
if we're
feeling
feeling
grateful.
we're feeling great. We're the vibes are good right now, which is amazing. And so always really good, I think, to just start off by figuring out what's the vibe, what are we feeling today? And so thank you all for participating in that. It gives me an idea of kind of like where we are. Um, a few community guidelines for the presentation today. One, there are no wrong answers. We're talking about feelings and we're talking about thoughts and we're talking about things that come inherently to us. So there is no right or wrong. Um, it's really just how we feel right now. The other piece is that only share what you might feel comfortable with sharing. It is okay to listen and to not speak and to just kind of be present and mindful and process information the way it feels the best to you. Next, respecting each other's experiences and stories should you choose to share. And also last, seeking support is a sign of strength. Strong people seek people. And so always wanting to make sure that folks feel that and know that as well whenever participating and engaging in anything related to this topic. Um, Of course, I'm going to start out with, the foundation to not only, my life and my career and what I'm super passionate about, but what I truly believe and what I really hope to really kind of relay to everyone today, which is that your mental health is your health, right? There's your physical health, there's your primary health, but your mental health is also a component of that, and it's also extremely crucial to the brain and the body and the connection of those two things together. And so, the topic of today being strong mind, strong DC, those two things go hand in hand. Your mind deserves the same care, the same level of concern, and the same level of consideration that your body does. So, just the way that we make sure that we're looking after our blood pressure, our cholesterol, we're making sure that we're getting our steps in, we're making sure, that we're eating right. We also need to make sure that our mind and our mental hygiene is also on the best levels that it can possibly be. The mind and the body are connected. And so while I think we've done a really great job just in general in our communities and talking about mental health, there's definitely more work that can always be done. And that's going to be like the number one salient thing all the time, which is that your mental health is just as important as your physical health, sometimes if not even more important. Mental health, I think, especially matters in Washington, D.C., where you all are. There's a lot of things that are very nuanced and amazing about living in the nation's capital, but that also comes with a lot of different complex and challenges that I don't think other folks really get to experience and face because we interface in DC with our government and our officials and our community a little bit differently. And we're also just sort of like the epicenter really of the world right now, right? And so it really comes with a lot of demands. Life is really fast in DC. It's always full of change, which is why it's so important for your mental health to be that much more resilient and your ability to manage and cope with your stress to be that much more greater, I think, than some of our counterparts in other states, just because of the nature of the environment of which that we live in. Caring for your mental health, it also helps you stay rooted. It helps you stay connected. A lot of times, because we are in a city that is so community driven and community based, and we are looking out for our neighbors, sometimes we are looking out for everybody, and the last person we are looking out for is ourselves. And so, in order for us to have resilient communities, in order for us to have resilient families, we need to make sure that our mental health is also strong and that we're making sure to take the steps to take care of ourselves so that we can help and continue to support and making sure that we keep DC and our communities the way that we wish for it to continue to thrive. Um, and last, your mental health, it supports, how we show up for ourselves. Your mental health supports how you show up for your family, and it really impacts also how you show up for your neighborhood. It shows up how you show up for your job, for your career. It shows up, in all of these different ways. And so, even though sometimes it's invisible, we can always see, the impacts of mental health in the immediate onset all of the time. It's always there. It's always an undercurrent, and it's always something that is quietly in the room until it's not so quiet. And that will take us to my next slide, which is really just an understanding of some of those things that sort of kind of start a little bit quiet in mental health, and then they start to have some resounding aftershock if we aren't taking care of them. And then, of course, after this, we'll talk about how to work with some of the things that I'll talk about on this particular slide. A lot of these words you've probably have heard before and are very familiar with, but really wanted to just provide a quick and dirty guide around how to particularly understand those specific terms and what they mean and how they particularly show up. Because if we understand our emotions and we understand our feelings, we can understand how they show up and how they impact our mental health. And then, of course, we can then understand how to put things in place to make sure that we are in control and that we are making sure that we're managing our health as effectively as we can. The first one is stress. I think everyone is like, oh, I'm stressed, I'm stressed, I'm stressed. Oh, this is stressful. But it is a clinical term. It is a it is a particular symptom of, mental health, different disorders, so on and so forth. And some stress is great. Like we need some stress in our life. Otherwise, we would always be on vacation mode. And even though that sounds really fun, I think for some of us, most of us really, you always get that itch, like I got to get back to doing something, right? But stress is a normal response to any particular change that you might have in life. It's a good way also to keep you safe, to keep you alert about what's going on. Stress and adrenaline sometimes go hand in hand, and it's an emotion that we tend to see, on the day to day when we think about what pressures we're experiencing, if we have particular health concerns that we're worried about. But too much stress over a long period of time can affect your health, as you know. So it's all about the balance. Some stress is good, it keeps us on our toes, but other times when we have an overload of stress, that's when we start to see complications start to trickle in and start to have impact in our day-to-day functioning. Stress is different from anxiety. I know sometimes folks interchange them and sort of lump them together because sometimes they can feel the same. But when you are anxious, or if someone is managing an anxiety disorder, or if you are someone that is feeling, something that is just like recurrent and persistent worry, that's when we start to get into some anxiety related symptoms. Anxiety is ongoing. Anxiety is persistent. It's almost this feeling of like constant worry or constant just unease. And it's hard to turn that off, right? You'll hear sometimes folks say, I'm just anxious. I'm just so anxious, right? That is something that is difficult to manage once that gate is somewhat open. And it's definitely something that can be related to a variety of topics that can impact our life. Again, anxiousness around your health, consistent anxiousness around your safety, and also just, I think even now that we're seeing from the pandemic, anxiousness around being alone or feeling lonely is also something that we're starting to see as well. And so it's a little bit more elevated than stress, but something that's prevalent in our day to day. Another emotion, another area of which that we can kind of understand is a level of depression or depressive symptoms. Depression is a little bit more than sadness. It's a lasting low mood. It's a loss of interest. And it can happen at any age. It can happen at any point in your life. I tend to consider depression something, or explain it to patients in a way. It's sort of like when you feel like you had an expectation for something and you weren't able to make it. That's when you start to feel sort of that depressive symptoms of like, this, like, I just missed this or I just missed that. And it could start to feel over time sort of like this ongoing rumination of just frustration, and just that internal sadness. Another area of which, for an overview here as well, as far as understanding components of our mental health, is this concept of burnout. You might hear that word as well. It can sound like, oh, I've had like a really long week. I just feel really, really burnt out. But burnout is very, very, very serious because it's the connection of an emotional exhaustion. So I'm emotionally just done. And then there's also a physical component to burnout as well. So I physically cannot feel like I can get back to myself. I like to explain it sometimes. It's like, burnout is when you could take the best nap in the world and you still wake up and you still feel tired. Sleep cannot fix burnout, right? It's not, I just need more sleep. It's not just, oh, can you just do this for me so I can kind of just lay here for a little bit? Burnout is a physical exhaustion from doing too much for too long. And I have here, especially for caregivers, because I think a lot of times, especially in our community, caregiving looks like a lot of different things. It's not necessarily taking care of someone in your household, or taking care of someone in your family. Caregiving sometimes look like really looking after the person that lives next door to you, or keeping a worry around someone where you're like, this person didn't look so good last time, and a consistent kind of thought process around something that just kind of leads to this emotional exhaustion and this space of just feeling like I have nothing left and I feel very depleted. And so that's really what the definition of burnout is. It's a very significant state of feeling. And then the last one is compassion fatigue. And this is something I think a lot of us are experiencing right now, which is just emotional weariness. It's like you turn on the TV or you turn on the radio, or I don't know if people listen to radios anymore, but you turn on any type of media and it's just chaos and dread and gloom and just bad things. And so when you feel, just emotionally exhausted and you just feel like you almost are getting at the point where it's like, I can't even listen to this anymore. I don't have the capacity to respond anymore. That's compassion fatigue. You would automatically have a reaction of feeling something to connect or empathy. And then you kind of just are at the point where you're just like, this feels like it's work and I just cannot, and I need to be able to build a boundary around this. And so I really wanted to take a moment to provide just sort of like a snapshot view of some of these very sort of everyday emotions and feelings, and sort of really kind of tie examples to them. Sometimes they can happen at the same time with one another. Sometimes they can be isolated around different things, but at least you'll have the ability to have the language to match to what you might be feeling. And then in the next few slides, we'll go over some tools and just some basic kind of strategies to be able to combat some of this. And so that way you can kind of have some ideas on ways, because I'm sure even though we've got some thumbs ups today and we've got some smiley faces, which is always great, it's always good for the days to have a toolkit for the days that we feel the opposite way. All right, so the first tool that I have here is called Pause and Choose. I say to folks, calm begins when we slow down and you choose one thing. Some days you can be so tired, so burnt out, so just over the day where it's like, what's the next best thing I need to do to get to the next day? And sometimes that's okay. It is okay some days to just say, I've got 50% of me today, and I've given 45%. So I'm almost at my 100%, right? Because today looks like a 50% day. So the first option here is to pause and decide, what do you need to do to get through the rest of the day? Who do you need to talk to get through the rest of the day? And choosing one small thing that helps can be extremely beneficial. I think a lot of times we think that we have to have this grandiose plan to feel better and to make these huge impacts in our life, and it's just not the case at all. Really sitting down with yourself and being mindful around, what do I need, right? It could be, I need rest because I did not sleep well last night because I was up late because, I was on the Twitter and I was reading the tweets, and I woke up the next day and I just need to really have a solid night's sleep tonight, and I will figure it out tomorrow. My mom always says, you just need another day, right? So it could just be an opportunity to decide later. It could be an opportunity just to set boundaries with yourself and the thing that's causing an impact to you, but giving yourself an opportunity to pause and really to make the next best decision for yourself is one of, I think, something that we kind of take for granted, to be able to pause. Like, not everything has to be, not every decision has to be made so quickly. And I think moving into that space allows you to figure out the next best thing for you to feel a little bit better. Option 2, limit the noise. I'm a really big fan of this as a behaviorist myself. I love to stay informed, but I don't like feeling overwhelmed. And I know myself, and I know that if something's really going on, I want to know everything. I want to know the updates. I want the alerts, especially when you're working, in and around DC and the DMV. There is always something going on. But in order to do that, and I know sometimes how that can impact me, I have to put limits around that, because I then would be all over the place, right? I'm getting alerts all throughout the day, and that does not make for a productive Simone. And so I'm really big fan of putting limits on the noise and the external stimuli. I only check the news at night. I only check it at nighttime. I do not listen to it in the morning. I do not, indulge in articles in the afternoon period. I give myself like X amount of time in the evening where I set my timer and I listen to and catch up on the day, and that's how I stay informed. I have friends that have it, they reverse it, so they only listen to it in the morning, and then in the evening, it is for family time, and it is for meditation, and it is for relaxation. And so, encouraging you to not necessarily cut off all of the noise, right? Because some noise is great, but picking 1 to 2 trusted sources that you are feeling are really consistent, picking a time of day where you feel like you won't be as catalyzed by information, and turning off your TV and turning off news and turning off anything that can excite you before you go to sleep. Because what tends to happen is when we start to get a lot of noise, we start to carry that as well, and that can feel very, very overwhelming over time. So that is tool number 2, is to put limits on yourself. Um, Tool 3 is understanding what you can and cannot control. So the circle of control, and sometimes I will draw this out myself if I need a reminder, but a reminder of the things that I cannot control, right? Like I cannot control the politics, I cannot control the world events, I cannot control other people's choices. And that's a hard one for me, right? Because I really want everybody to be great, but I cannot choose things for people as badly as I would want them to do the things that I would want them to do. So I have to always remind myself and check in, what things can I control? I can control the things that I do, my routines. I can control who I talk to. I can control how I rest. I can control when to ask for help. I can also control how I respond to things. And that's also something that takes a lot of practice as well. I have to choose to respond differently to feel better. And a big way that I personally have done this over the last couple of years, as a recovering people pleaser, is learning how to say no, and knowing that me saying no is not a direct connection to Simone or anything I've done, or it doesn't mean it's no forever, but it does mean no right now for this thing. And so those are the things that I can control to make myself feel better. And a lot of times that peace comes from focusing on the things that are on the inner circle, which are the things you can control, versus what's on the outer circle. So I encourage you to add that to your toolbox as well. Tool 4 is a daily anchor. I'm also a really big fan of this intervention. A lot of times, what makes us anxious, so back to that sort of like card of emotions, is uncertainty. It's the unknown, right? It's what's going to happen, and am I going to be prepared? And we saw a lot of that with the snow that came last weekend, right? We saw folks fleeing to the supermarkets and really just uncertain about what's to come, given the information that we received from the news, from the weather, right, to make sure that we were prepared. But uncertainty is very difficult to kind of creep into our lives if you've got really great structure. And a great way to do that is to have a daily anchor to help balance and to help really provide some level of consistency, and also to reward yourself with some level of certainty throughout the day. And it could look different, right? A daily anchor for some people is waking up every morning and making the bed. And because they know, regardless of what happens once I leave this house, I know I'm coming back and my bed is made and my room is going to look a particular way. And I was able to have control of that, right? Some people, their daily anchors are, I have to have this coffee this way at this time. I sit, I think, there's no devices on, and that's the way that I'm able to, what I like to say, get my paper clips back, right? I'm able to sit there and really have this moment for myself, and it's protected. So I encourage you to think about something that you can do every day that is not a huge lift, that doesn't feel like it's and unable to be consistent, but something that would reward you with a level of certainty that you could control. It could be listening to music, it could be taking a particular route, it could be prayer, it could be reflection, it could be at the beginning of the day, it could be at the end of the day. But it should be something that's consistent, something that's practical, and something that's simple, and something that you can easily look forward to. All right, tool number 5, name it to tame it. So, a lot of times our feelings and our emotions, they are always telling us these things, and They are pieces of information around how we're feeling and how we are experiencing our surroundings. But a lot of times when we are faced with our feelings, we tend to just sort of tense up and we're like, oh, I don't want to deal with this. No, no, no. Like, this is making me feel a little too much. I don't know what's going on. And, we tend to equate a particular feeling with perhaps, feeling weak or unable or not strong. And that's just not the case. And so instead of leaning away from the feeling that you are experiencing, the tool here is to name it. And this is actually, I think, a strategy that is a lot more difficult than I think it sort of lends itself to. A lot of times, and I added this image here of the feelings iceberg, which I'm sure you all have seen before, but a lot of times the feeling that we initially have is, if you look at the iceberg, it's what's above the iceberg, right? Like it's what you can see, right? It's anger, like I'm angry, right? Or it's anxiousness or it's frustration. But this strategy is asking you to dig a bit deeper and to say, are you really angry or are you hurt? Right? Are you really, really, really just anxious or are you lonely? Right? Are you really, really angry or are you grieving? Right? Did someone leave? Right? Did you expect something and that person let you down and you feel sad or you feel guilty? A lot of times also the feeling that we have could be anger, it could be frustration, but what we really feel is shame, or we feel embarrassed, or we feel vulnerable. And so it takes a lot of practice to kind of allow yourself to name the actual feeling that you're experiencing. But the benefit and the reward of being able to do that is that it starts to reduce the intensity of that feeling. The minute you name the thing is the minute you sort of take its power away. So the minute you say, you know what, I lashed out, I was really angry about this, but that really came from a space that I felt like I was really sad about this, or I felt really lonely, or that, I felt very just like fearful that, something was going to happen. That's the minute that that feeling starts to de-escalate and that you're starting to feel a little bit better because you were able to identify what you were specifically feeling and not just the outer layer that's above the surface. And this takes practice because it requires you to kind of look at that mirror across from you and say, yeah, I do that. And that's actually, no, I didn't really say the thing that I was really feeling. But once you start getting into the swing of it, it starts to become a great habit to help de-escalate your feeling and sort of bring some of your anxiousness down. Tool number 6, two good things, and I'm sure you all have heard some variation of this before, but even on some of the most stressful and some of the most really just dark and gloomy days that can feel like, it is just like really, really bad, and I don't really know how I'm going to be able to cope with this, or, it's not looking great for me right now and how I'm feeling. Um, if you can take a moment on some of those days to sit and reflect, and think about two good things that happened that day, because even on the darkest days there is good that still exists, even on the hardest of the days that we have. And so I keep a journal by my nightstand. I've also done this with patients where we've taken pieces of paper and they've taken a piece of scrap paper every day and throw something in the jar. But ask yourself at the end of the day, and this could be one of your end of day rituals, what's one thing that was just okay today? It doesn't have to be the best thing, it doesn't have to be the most amazing thing, but the practice of sitting down and writing and reflecting is therapeutic, but also thinking about something that you might just be grateful for. It doesn't have to be, I didn't maybe get everything today, or it wasn't the most stellar day, but you know what? Maybe the thing is that I thought this, meeting with my boss is going to go completely left, and actually, like, I got good feedback today. That's a good day. right? Maybe it's that I was really nervous that my kid was gonna like hurt themselves at this hockey game. And actually, they were amazing and they actually learned how to play the sport really well. And we were able to have a really great conversation about sports and teamwork after that. And so just taking the day to express some daily gratitude and reflecting on things that are just the quiet moments of gratefulness, I think, are also ways to help de-escalate and also center your nervous system to bring you down to a really nice homeostasis at the end of the day. So you can start to just sort of give yourself a clean canvas and a clean slate for the next day. Um, and then it starts to become a really cool activity because at the end of the year, you get to reflect on all of the great things from, all of the 52 weeks, and it becomes a really cool project year by year. All right. Last but not least, the seventh tool that I have for today is really understanding what your body is saying to you when it comes down to stress and when it comes down to feeling anxious. A lot of times, especially if we're still working on how to really understand and communicate our mental health and our feelings, our body is speaking loudly, and we also need to be able to recognize that and potentially use that as a tool to help support some of the things that we may not be able to verbalize in the moment. And so your body will signal to you that stress is building in your body and that you need to manage that effectively. It could look like a lot of different things. Your shoulders can feel really tight. You could start to become really prone to headaches because maybe you're not really present or drinking enough water and you're dehydrated. And so it's like, oh, my head hurts. Sleeping and impact to eating, sleeping, daily functioning is always a really big indicator as well. Anytime you have an upset stomach or if you have like GI issues and you're just like, wait, what's going on here? That could be your body responding to some anxiousness as well. I know for me, I am a clenched jaw person. So when I'm super stressed, like it is just like this all the time. Then I just have to make sure that I sit back and just say, okay, like release the jaw. So when you notice the signs and you notice that your body is really responding to something, don't ignore that. Take a moment to decompress and kind of think to myself, okay, like, yeah, I probably should lower my shoulders a little bit. I'm a little bit tense right now, a little bit anxious. I just read that email, or yeah, I'm having trouble sleeping because maybe was up a little too late on the call on the group thread, and and then for me everything's just sounding real bad over there, right? The stress kind of got to me. So those are all ways that your body can also tell you like, hey, I'm not doing the best right now, so we probably need to revisit how we're experiencing just different information or different people or just different things on the day to day. So how do we put it all together? I threw a lot of information at you. Which is great. But it's also important to know how do you put it all together and how do you really just allow yourself to take some of those pieces of information and really help build a year ahead that will carry you into the next year. And the first opportunity that you have to sort of think about, your toolbox and your plan. Essentially you have to be intentional about the ways that you want to feel better, and it happens by building small steps, and it happens by really kind of picking things and learning how to do them on days where you're not at the zero. And I think that's the biggest trick for learning how to do anything, right? We want to practice our skills and our tools, not when we feel the worst. We want to practice them when we have the full cup, not when it's empty. So that way they become an automatic response when we don't feel that great. So you don't have to use all of the tools provided today. You want to try them a little bit at a time. You want to come back and you'll all have a copy of this PowerPoint, but go back to them when you feel like you need a little bit of support, or if you feel like you're in a space where you're just like, I don't really know what to do next, or I don't really want to talk to this person. I don't really want to go there, but I know that I can kind of figure it out. That's a great opportunity when you really want to start to utilize some of the tools and figure out ways that you can sort of manage and cope through a lot of the things that we're trying to navigate, in 2026. I would be remiss if I did not include some local resources, of course, for DC. Sometimes it's like I don't even know where to start, and if you're like, Dr. Dice, I used your techniques, all 7 of them, and none of them worked. Okay, great. So your next step then is to figure out different resources, whether it's community, whether it's local resources. But I'm always going to throw in information around the DC Help Access Helpline. They can provide referrals for counseling and crisis care, mental health services as well. There's also the 24/7 emotional support line for 988, and of course, some other additional DC government resources here as well that can be helpful just to get information and figure out what's available in the district. And that's all that I have for you all today. I know that we've got a little bit of time left, so happy to answer any questions as well. But I really appreciate you all being able to log in this evening and just learn a little bit about some of the things that you might be feeling and experiencing, but most importantly, ways to sort of combat some of those things, and hopefully being able to practice some of these techniques and strategies and also share them with others as well. So thank you so much.
That was truly amazing. I do thank you. And I think I did hear you say that you will provide the PowerPoint that I can share with that's awesome. Um, on one of your earlier slides, there was a mention of is it the Pomodoro technique? What is that?
Yes, so the Pomodoro technique is a sort of in really plain terms, it's the use of a timer to give
Hmm.
yourself a limited amount of time to do something. So they have really cool ones on Amazon for like $5 where I have them all over my house because I also need to, here's one here. But it is a timer that has like different increments of time on each of the sides. And so like give yourself 30 minutes to look at the news or an hour, or maybe you're only giving yourself 20 minutes or 15 minutes. And so it's an opportunity to kind of put yourself on a behavioral timer so that way you can still do the things that you want to do, but you're not sort of like on the doom scrolling path and kind of you're limiting your exposure to whatever it is that you're trying to control.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Um, Sometimes when people feel so overwhelmed, they almost feel that they're like standing in concrete and don't even know exactly which way to go. You mentioned a lot, but is there a first small shift that you encourage them to make? I mean, I'm just so overwhelmed. I don't even feel I have time to think about self-care. I mean, I'm just so overwhelmed. How do we get ourselves unstuck?
Yeah, absolutely. It's difficult because I think that, when we're in a state where we are just sort of like, I don't know the next best thing, I would say move, right? Like any type of movement towards anything is the best way to kind of get unstuck. And that could be reaching out to someone that you trust. It could be reaching out to your, spiritual community. It could be reaching out to some of the resources that are available online. But you don't have to necessarily know the answer, and you don't necessarily have to know the route, but we do have to move and we have to be intentional about the movement. And so I think that's really kind of the message there. It's very similar to physical health. Like we don't know that we need to exercise until our pants don't fit. We're like, oh wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. Like I knew I was not supposed to do that much over Thanksgiving, but I did. And now my pants don't fit. So I can either buy new pants or I could do something about fitting in my old pants. And mental health is the same way. I know I don't feel great. I know that my sleep is impacted. I know that I might be, snapping at people now because I'm more stressed out. I have to be intentional about doing something about that. And so there's different tells that I think if anything, we always know when something is wrong. We just may not have the words, but we have to be intentional about what to do, even if we don't know what to do. And sometimes that could look like putting your plan together, putting a toolbox together, keeping a list of friends in your phone that you know that you can call on to kind of be like your emotional accountability friend. Like, hey, like, you responded to this differently, or your mood is a little bit differently. People that you trust, that you can go to, I think are always going to be really great places to kind of get that support. But we have to be more intentional, I think, around our mental health because it's just so crucial to how we're functioning day to day.
Thank you. You gave some really good clues to how one might recognize that they're stressed. I mean, some people carry it in their neck. You said that you clench your jaws. Are there similar signs? If what if I'm anxious? If what if I'm depressed before it becomes overwhelming? Are there some earlier signs that one might recognize?
It really looks different for everyone,
Yeah.
because I think for, you know, anxiety, we all cope differently with it, right? Like, so there are folks that feel super anxious and then they shut down because it's so overwhelming that
Hmm.
I'm not going to actually move. Like, so it's kind of like if you think about fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah.
Some folks will freeze in the moment and then that's it. And then there are folks that get really anxious and then they're overproducing, right? Because I'm so anxious about the unknown. I think that if I overwork or if I
Yeah.
overproduce, then I can control the outcome because I'm doing something right now. And all that's doing is stressing them out even more because it won't make a difference about how much you do now because you don't have control over the thing. And so I would say that it looks different for everyone, but I think that sort of internal awareness is important. So if you know X is your baseline and you're starting to be a little bit under or over that, then that's when we start to, we need to pause and kind of think to ourselves, okay, this is not how I would normally react to this. Another example, so I kind of give the example of like sort of like the snapping, but I know I'll use myself as an example. So I can see the same in my apartment. I could see like the same spoon in the sink every day, and I know like that's all right, that's the spoon. It's I'm gonna put the spoon in the sink, great. But when I'm really stressed, or if it's at the end of the semester, the same spoon in the sink that any other day wouldn't bother me. When I'm super stressed, it's like I cannot believe the spoon is in the sink, right? Because I am now maximizing something that ordinarily wouldn't have been a problem for me, but I'm stressed out. So this is now something that I'm responding to differently. And so I think that if we're honest with ourselves around what we're feeling and how we would normally respond, any deviation from that would warrant an opportunity for us to think like maybe I'm not as okay as I think I am, and maybe I need to look into some strategies to kind of feel a little bit better.
Madam Moderator,
Um, What I wanted to say, there are a couple questions that have popped up in the Q&A. Let me just remind everyone, this is a webinar. So unfortunately, the only people you're going to see on the screen are Dr. Dice, Dr. Sadler, and myself. However, if you do have a question, I encourage you to write it in the chat because we'd like to respond to as many questions. And there's one question right here, and I want you to address this, Dr. Dice, because I think this person is speaking for more than just one of us. It says if you feel sad and depressed most of the time, what's your first step for help? I mean, and I think I hear from other people that I talk to who often say, I just feel just sad and depressed. And I know you're not here to, diagnose and treat and all of that, but how do you guide someone who has those feelings of sadness and depression?
I would say, and thank you for asking this question and being brave to post it. It's definitely a question I think that a lot of us experience and kind of would love the answer to. I would say that if you're feeling sad and depressed for most of the time, the first question I would ask is it impacting other areas of your life, right? Like, are you feeling because what's most of the time, right? If you feel like I used to feel this way and now I find myself just feeling really sad and I don't really have a lot of interest in a lot of things that I used to have interest in.
Mhm.
And I kind of just really don't really want to be bothered with things. I used to go out all the time, but now I'm kind of just like, I want to stay inside. That would let me know that there's something going on, right? Because there's something that shifted someone that used to be really outgoing or someone that used to really like something into someone that is a different version of that person. And so I would think that the first step for help would be to seek some sort of consultation, whether it be consultation in your spiritual community for guidance and resources. I'm always going to encourage folks to reach out to folks that are, within your health insurance panel related to counseling and consultation, because a lot of times you kind of just need you need an appointment to figure out the next best step. And sometimes that can mean like meeting with a counselor and saying like, these are some of the things that I'm feeling, and them saying, well, it may be one-on-one therapy, but it may be group therapy, or it could be a different version of some sort of resource that can be supportive at the time. So it's hard to know specifically without kind of knowing the full details, but it kind of goes back to that movement thing where it's like, if like your mood is shifted and you're not feeling that great, if you had a stomach ache, you would go to urgent care, right? Like you would go to the doctor and you would say, I don't feel great. My stomach hurts. I want to feel better. I would encourage the same thing for your mental health. And I would go talk to a counselor and say, hey, this is kind of how I'm feeling. And then the counselor would be able to support you on the next steps on what that could particularly look like, and also provide support and resources that would be available to you as well. And so treat your feelings and your emotions the same way you would treat if you had symptoms of like the flu or if you broke your ankle.
Thank you. Thank you. Want to ask another question, and that is, how can we be kinder to ourselves? Oftentimes, I think we feel that we're just not coping well enough. Kind of know what's going on, but I just can't either get a grip and so how do we be kinder to ourselves when we really feel that we're just not coping well enough?
I think, it's a couple of things. And I think that a lot of what we all are all trying to manage right now,
Mhm.
um, there's no manual for it. There's so many every day I feel like we wake up and it's like this has never happened before. This is a one in a lifetime experience. And if there's other millennials here, it's like, we've been living through like once in a lifetime experiences, right? Every couple of years there's some catastrophic thing where it's like, good bored. Like I don't know if I can take anymore. And I think if we start there with this unbridled honesty that we are doing the best that we can. And so
Mhm.
I think that if we sat with ourselves, and I really encourage journaling as well, and talk about the things I used to feel this, or I used to be able to bounce back this way, and then also kind of sit with yourself and also maybe in community and say, yeah, and right, like there's no opportunity so that we can't get back to that. But as far as being kinder to yourself, you're doing the best that you can with the circumstances that we are in. And so I think it's important also to be around folks that have, somewhat of that safe space for you to be able to express sort of the grief of the old you that you had, but also be able to kind of hold on to each other and say we're doing this together, we're figuring this out together. And I will say to everyone here, like, if you woke up today and you put one foot in front of the other, given everything that is going on, you had a great day. Right. And so it may not feel the best, it may not feel like you're managing it all, but you were able to do that without hurting anyone, without hurting like you are, that is a successful day. And
Sure.
so you will get back to the momentum that you used to be at, and maybe you don't want to get back to that momentum because it was too much before. But I think the moral of that response is that you get to decide what you want to do and how you want to be. And you also have to make sure you're taking care of yourself. And so if you are doing it, like I had said earlier, right? Like if you wake up and you all you have is 50%, and by the end of the day you gave 50%, you gave 100%, right? And so we have to be kinder to ourselves around the realities of what we're carrying and the weight of that. And we just have to shift and adjust, and we'll be able to get back to what we used to want or what we used to be, but you get to co-create, what that looks like as well. So nothing that we're experiencing right now is of the norm. And so we can't be expected to be our old selves given those conditions.
Thank you. This is a really good question. Can we talk a little bit about what we should look for in our children and our grandchildren?
It's like I must around like mental health, maybe.
Yes, exactly.
It's a little tough knowing the generation of the children and grandchildren. I am going to assume, I don't know if Laureen, you could maybe give ages and I can maybe give some descriptions of the generations, but if maybe the grandchildren, let me take a like Gen Z, or I don't know if it could be Generation Alpha. It's tough without knowing which generation of grandchildren and children we're referring to. Um, I, I will say this, I think, as someone who uh, is a all ages, okay, school age, all right. Um, they're interesting groups, the our Gen Alphas and our Gen Z kids as far as like what to look for. Um, though they're interesting generations, I think that when we are looking at multi-generational families and also in workplaces, the communication approach is very different. And so I don't know if y'all saw a while back this video of this household, and they were like going to every member of the family, like, what's the hand signal for telephone? And so everyone of a certain age was like this, and then everyone that was in school was like this. And it was terrifying to me because what do you mean this is the hand phone? This is the hand signal for phone. And I think if you start there with that level of awareness, Maureen, right, that we automatically have different ways that we're even just communicating, and the ways in which information is being shared, and the ways in which children are really sort of in my opinion, having very limited spaces to kind of be kids these days. That's kind of like the first spot. And so, as far as like what to look for, it's kind of difficult to answer that question. But I would say if you start to notice any sort of like change in personality and change in things that you might have concern of, I would say think about the approach of ways to talk with the child or like your family member, right? What are the ways that you can meet them where they are to have the conversations that I think are still relevant to today? But it's just, I think a lot of it is the way we approach it. I think years ago you could sit outside and you can, but kids today they don't go outside, right? They're on the phone, they're on the tablets, they're on the iPad. So, what are ways that you can sort of engage to have those conversations? To talk about some of the things that you're seeing or experiencing that's not necessarily accusatory, but more so leading with curiosity. And then I think from there, if you're, of course, starting to see things and have concerns, I think, the next step is to reach out for support, whether that be through school system, whether that be through, family counseling or, what have you. I think there's just a lot of opportunities out there for kids.
Thank you. I'm going to have just one more question because we're approaching the top of the hour, and I do want to give Dr. Sadler a chance to close this out. And I want to, of course, say thank you. But this one, do you think support groups can help you to know you're not alone in your thinking and find how others are coping? I mean, many people, feel isolated and withdrawn. What might you suggest for people that are, feeling a sense of isolation?
Yeah, absolutely. I am a big, big, big champion of group therapy and support groups. I think I generally get strength from a collective. There's definitely power in knowing that you are not the only person managing something. And I think the ability to strengthen your community, Starlene, and understanding that there is a network of people who are also equally going through, whatever it is that you're looking to manage is a very powerful intervention. And I will say, even at Hopkins, our groups that we run for our students are extremely popular because a lot of students prefer to engage in sort of that group space to kind of manage the stress of writing a dissertation or being in a lab or being an international student. And it feels less isolating to kind of, tackle this problem or this issue. And so you can find groups all over. There are community groups that are available. There are also online groups, I think, that are also particularly can be helpful to connect in with different communities. So I am a huge advocate of group therapy, and sometimes almost even more than individual therapy. And I think that when they're run really successfully, they can be very, very powerful. So don't ever think like group is not as great as individual therapy. Sometimes you can even do both at the same time. I've had patients that have done that, but would encourage you, of course, to do that. And of course, another way to, learn information around that could be through your healthcare provider, through consultation with a counselor who might be able to put you in a pipeline with groups and support groups as well.
Dr. Dice, this has been amazing. I'm feeling a little lighter right now, knowing that I have some tools that I can certainly
Absolutely.
begin focusing on. So I really want to thank you for your time, the effort you put into preparing the presentation and sharing with us this evening. I'm so happy that you're willing to share the presentation with us, and I just want to let everyone know that I will be sharing the presentation as well as the link to the video very, very soon. Thank you all for joining us this evening. It's a very important topic, and I'm hoping that you also will share some of the information that you have gathered with others as well. So, and Simply has many support groups as well, and I am more than willing to share with you the wealth of support that we can offer you. So, again, thank you all so very much. And I want to just again thank you so much, Dr. Dice. This has
Absolutely.
been more than amazing. And Reverend Dr. Sadler, I'd love for you just to close us out this evening, please.
Well, thank you, Madam Moderator, and I certainly applaud you for the extraordinary way that you led us through this session. This has been so exciting and therapeutic for me. I want to ask Dr. Dice a 10-second question so that I will make the right application. She spoke about speaking to things. Could you say something about that again? This was so exciting to me.
Which part, Reverend Dr. Sal?
You talked about some of the things that are obstacles and we are confronted with that sometimes we should take the power away from them by speaking to them.
And I think it was Name It. Yeah, that was the one that you were speaking of, naming the
Name it.
situation. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And so I'm sorry, the question related to that?
Yes. I wanted to hear you just go over that again, 10 seconds or so.
Yeah, so it was about removing the power from an emotion by meeting it head on and naming it. It's the concept of almost like, calling a spade or, calling out the elephant in the room. And so I like to use the iceberg image for that because a lot of times we're saying what we feel, which is the thing on the surface. Like the easy answer is angry, but the more reflective exercise is to name what's actually impacting us, which is that you hurt my feelings or I felt abandoned. And that naming instantly removes the intensity of the emotion. And it's scary because it requires you to be vulnerable, but it de-escalates the anxiousness because I'm being honest about what really activated me.
Thank you so much. And you're right, Madam Moderator. That was my application talking about naming it because I found a biblical application that I want to use, and I wanted to have her verify what she said so that I can correctly utilize it. The scripture gives us authority to speak to those things instead of
Mhm.
running to Daddy, our Father, who is God for everything. He has given us that authority. Thank you. This has been an extraordinary session. Let us
Absolutely.
pray. God, we thank you for beginning this year with the tools that will assist and help us with our mental health. We ask your blessings upon this assembly of persons who have gathered here with us. We ask blessings upon the panel. And this year, as we move with motivation, with confidence, that we can work through all the things that will be coming our way. We pray your blessings upon our individual lives, our communities of faith, wherever we may be, and that we all will get through the coldness and snow and ice and storms of this season. And spring is on its way, and so is it in our lives. We ask this prayer that it will continue to bless us, and every heart say, Amen.
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 Again, thank you so much. I do want to let those that are joining us know that we have yet another session coming in February. February 18th is going to be our next discussing the facts, and it's going to be we'll be talking about heart health, and you'll be hearing more from us. So again, from the bottom of my heart, I say thank you so much. Dr. Dice, I can't say enough how well you have made me, and I'm sure others feel this evening. So we thank you for your time, and I'm looking forward to even sharing your contact information and your presentation with others, along with the video. So again, thank you everyone for joining in. I hope you were as enriched as I was.
Thank you all.
Have a wonderful evening. Please be safe, everyone. Take care now.